Charmer's Gems have given me some beautiful gemstones to work with, and my challenge is to create a sun catcher. So I got this bundle of bits, this beautiful piece of agate. It's an agate slice, but it hasn't got a drilled hole. And I've got some rose quartz hearts, and I've got some beautiful little faceted beads, little carnelian, and there's some strawberry quartz. I've got some fluorite, I've got some white topaz. They're all quite tiny. I think that's fluorite. But so I've got lots to play with, and somehow I've got to come up with a good design. So the wire I'm going to be using is 1.6 for the framework and structure. I'll be using some 0.4 for binding and connecting, and I probably will use some 0.8 as well. And obviously my trusty tools, my round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, cutters, flat nose pliers, and I will need possibly a few other bits as well, but you'll see how I go. I'll make this as I go. So first thing to do is draw an outline of whatever slice of agate or stone that you need to set at the center or hang from your sun catcher. And I've also put the prongs where I want them. So draw around it and draw that line slightly smaller, and then I'm just going to measure. So this piece of string is really not that important. You could use a piece of paper, but it's just to measure the length of the outline and then add all those prongs, and those prongs will be doubled wire, so you've got to double those, and they're about 1 centimetre long. So I'm skimming straight to the next section where I've already done that, and now I've bound in that big swirly S. So I'm using 0.4 binding wire to put that in as a backing. So you can see it's got the little bindings, it's got the prongs that have got binding just underneath them so that they don't open up. In fact, I have to do one more there. And then the wire ends up at the top with whatever's left over. And that means it'll sit just behind the slice of agate or the stone I want to use, and I can push the prongs over to the top, which will hold it in place. So those prongs are quite wobbly because it's thin wire. I've used 0.8, but you can use 0.8 or 1 mil. And you need to push them upright so they sit at right angles to the structure framework. I would do this on a hard surface, so I'm using my steel block because it is sort of such an open sort of piece and it could wobble and misshape so easily. So just hold it on a firm background like the steel block and push them up, ready to place your piece of agate in the inside. So that swirly S is only there as a backing so it can't fall out. And really you could put any shape there. It could be a wiggle, it could be, you know, a V shape, it can be anything. It's just binding something into the back so that it can't fall out. So then you're going to place the piece you're going to set and with the inside, and then you're going to start working on pushing those prongs around. So obviously this is a thin slice and my prongs are only 10 millimeters long of doubled wire. So you know, then it's not going to be too hard, and it's completely flat surface. It's not like a cabochon that has a domed area. So you can do this in, I mean, if you didn't want to do the prong setting, you could wire wrap it, but all I'm trying to achieve is to create some way of holding it in place and having a suspension link so that I can put it on my sun catcher, because at this stage it's got nowhere, unless I drill it, nowhere to suspend it from. So I'm just using now the nylon end of my hammer. Do not obviously use the steel end because you will completely smash your piece of agate to pieces. So very gently, really gently, I'm tapping those ends. And if you have a burnishing tool, you can do it with that. If you have a pushing tool and you're used to setting, you can do it with that. And if you have another way of doing it, please do it another way. This is just sort of a quick way of holding something in place that is rather flat, that needs a suspension link or some way of linking it to the structure or framework. So you must spend, a bit of time, because the whole thing, because it's quite big, really needs to be firmly held in place, and it's not quick to do. You start on one side, then go to the other side, and you just do it gradually and gradually. And everything with wire you want to do gradually, because it is prone to kinking, it is prone to misshaping. So by handling it, very respectively, you can make these things work for you, and they sort of slowly work harden around the surface. So there you have it. You've got it in your prongs. It feels nice and firm, and you can spend as much time on it as you want. You can pull the backing in more, at the back. You can just spend a bit longer than me, basically. Now, the next bit is the structure. So I've decided to do 2 circles because it's probably the easiest thing. And my center circle is going to hold my agate slice. So it's really, the whole thing is dependent on the size of your agate slice that you're using, and each piece is going to be individual. So I've made a circle that sits very neatly around there to frame it. And the way I finish the circles off is I make a link, and then I'm going to turn that link so that it hooks around the outside of the frame. So that's going to secure the piece to create a solid circle. So just squeeze the end of the wire and link around that, and then push the extending wire. So you want that extending wire, because that's going to be useful in a minute, to project at 90 degrees from the top of the circle. So that is going to sort of reinforce and hold that slice in place. It'll just give it a little bit more framework and security. Now my outer circle, so this is again dependent on how big you want your whole frame of your sun catcher to be. You do the same thing, make a little link and turn it round so that it grips around the outside of the circle. Squeeze that around and make sure that's secure. And that the projecting wire from that is going to be the wire that you suspend your whole sun catcher off. So if you misshape your circle as you're doing this, just put it back on whatever you've shaped it on. It could be a can of paint, it could be a big vase, it could be whatever shaping tool that you can find around the house. Now I'm going to just gently work harden. So I just gently hammer the frameworks, and that will mean that because this is aluminium wire, 1.6 mil, it'll really reinforce that shape. So it compounds the wire and creates a firm circle that won't distort. So you need to do that to both of the circles. So you gently go around, and I know there is no steel block that's big enough, so you have to go around. So the next bit is we're going to take the shorter wire, and it doesn't matter if they're both the same length for you, and make that one stay up. And this longer one, I'm going to, because I've got it, I'm going to create a little bit of an open spiral, which will be a decorative little top piece for my stone. So I may as well use it. So by bringing it over from the back to the front, and then I'm just going to give that a bit of a hammer, and all that does is flatten the wire, so it will sit better on my flat stone. That's the only reason I've flattened it. And I just give it a bit of flattening, and then that will sit on the front of the stone, because that's another thing, that with the prongs around the sides, it also reinforces the fact that it's held in place from the back to the front. So again, only the nylon end. I would never use the steel end on a stone because I'm liable to scratch it or break it. So the next thing is that little wire that's protruding there can be used to connect. So I'm going to wrap that round the top of my the small circular frame, and that means it is then held in place. I will need to do more securing with wire to keep, otherwise it will sort of float about in there. But at least I've got it now where I want it, which is in that framework of that little circle. So we just check now, put the smaller circle within the larger circle and try and get where we want to place it. I mean, you don't have to place it in the center. You could do an asymmetric sun catcher because, you know, the stone isn't symmetrical. Now I'm going to place it in the center, and then I'm going to measure roughly where the center is, and I'm going to cut some short bits of wire. But I'm first of all going to secure the top of that wire to my framework so it's sitting roughly at the center, and I will just wrap that around that framework to secure it there. So once I've got one of those wires in, this is the back of it now, but it doesn't really matter which side I work on. I'm just going to take off the excess. And I realize I'm working quite fast for you, and I probably should be paying more attention to doing this more beautifully. But the whole point of my tutorials is really to give you inspiration and give you ideas of how you could do this yourself, how you would fix something without a hole, you know, into a sun catcher. So now I've got that where I want that. I'm now going to decide on which of my beads I'm going to use, how I'm going to decorate it, and I'm also going to put some little prongs to hold that small circle. So I'm using the 1.6 again, and I've made little short cuts of the wire, made a little hook, and I'm going to connect the smaller circle within the larger circle so it doesn't move around everywhere, otherwise the whole centerpiece will swing all the time. So little hooks at one end, hook that onto the small inner circle. Use your flat nose pliers or chain nose pliers to squeeze those hooks shut, just squish them down, and then bring them to the outside of the frame. I would cut off some of the excess because I've got a little bit too much, and just leave enough so that you have enough to bend around the side of the frame to fix that area in place. So again, take it to the back. It's all a little bit wobbly at this stage. It is a bit like working with a live octopus. It's all, you know, so you've got to be careful you don't misshape the outer frame because it's thin and the agate is quite heavy. But, you know, if you do it just step by step, don't rush it, you'll be fine. So I've got one side now. Then I'm going to do the base. I'm going basically, so I've got it secured with these stem wires from the top and both sides, and that gives me a little bit of stabilization and security for me to start my, you know, decorative binding with the beads. So again, each of these little sticks of wire, make little bends or hooks into them, and then bring them round the outside of the framework. And the reason I do it with this thicker wire and just used a few of them is just by stabilizing it, I won't have to use masses of binding wire to hold it in place. It just gives me the structure framework to begin with. You see, they're all a bit slidey at this point, but I don't want to fix them too hard until I'm absolutely sure that they are where I want them. So I've sort of squeezed them down, but not too firmly until I absolutely can see they're in the right places. So I'm getting there. It's just, this is the bit that really is, you know, wants to wobble the most. So again, snip off any excess if it's too long and bring that last one around the framework and bending it and then you'll squeeze it shut and you can take off any excess. So once you're there, you'll feel a lot happier because the whole piece is more stabilized. So I'm just going to snip this little excess bit off. So this type of piece, because it's big, makes it difficult. The smaller the piece, the easier. So it's just I've chosen to do a big sun catcher. Now I'm using the 0.4 wire and I'm going inside that little prong area because I want to make sure that I'm fixing my agate to the small circle framework as well as to the larger framework. So I'm just doing a little stitch on one side of one of those prongs and then the other side. So that means I've got it sort of, the stone is fixed to the small circle, and then I'm going to start with my beading. I want to make a nice sort of beaded pattern that if it's a sun catcher, you obviously want something that will catch the light. And even though the light will go through my slice of agate, it's very transparent and it is very beautiful when the light goes through it, I need something else to make it a bit more dynamic. So I've secured a long piece of wire, an arm's length of wire, just at that point. And now I'm going to work on both of those wires. So I've got a piece of wire coming out from one side and a piece of wire coming out the other side. And then I can work around the frame on one side with one of them, the other. Actually, this one's too short, so I might just start on the longer one. So now, which beads to use? I think I'm going to go for the fluorite because they seem to blend and they have facets, so they do sparkle. So I'm going to use those, and I do like the variegated colours, and I think they'll add a little flash of light and just a little bit more colour. So these are very small, so it's going to take me quite a while with my eyesight. So the first thing I'm going to do is wire wrap those stems because I don't like those thick stems that protrude. So I'm going to add a bead, wire wrap around, add a bead, wire wrap around, and go all the way up the stem. So what I do is I hold the bead on the stem, and then I can wrap the wire around a couple of times, ready for the next bead. You've got to hold the bead in place because otherwise it will spin around and end up on the side of that wire. So each bead is done like that. Take a bead, hold it in place, wrap around, and really wrap tightly because you'll have them, you know, sort of like turning over to the back and coming out at the sides. And so it's just doing each one with some determination and yeah, just being mindful, I suppose. So you go all the way along all the prongs. So do that little bit of beading along each of those prongs. And here I am. I've done that bit already, so you don't have to watch the boringness of it. Now I've put another length of wire by the top prong, and now I'm going to start beading in those spaces. So pick up the rest of your fluorite beads or whatever beads you've got to hand, your little crystals, it can be lovely sparkly crystals, and I'm going to do a zigzag pattern in between those spaces. And I'm going to use some bugle beads as well. So these are some little gold bugle beads. They're just little glass bugle beads because I feel I run out of my gemstones too quickly, and this gives me a spacer in between each bead. It also sets off the beads beautifully because each of those beads is individual. Each of those beads has a different colour and has a different facet. I mean, they've all been hand cut in India, and I want to really, you know, showcase them as little individual gems. So those little gold spacer beads are really useful for something like this because they just set everything off, and they'll also add extra sparkle. So you can use silver, you can use gold. I've decided on gold because of that tone in my lovely warm tone in my agate slice. So I'm done one bar coming up at an angle, and then I'm wire wrapping to the top of the frame, and then I come back down to make the first of those spikes or rays for my sun catcher. So just alternate gold bugle bead to your gemstone, and until you reach the inner circle again. So you're going to go up, down, and do as many of these rays or triangles as you can fit within that gap. So I'm just going to keep going on this. It's a bit laborious for you to watch, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm just threading and then making sure that it reaches back down to the next frame. So this is all going to give it security and make it much stronger, and it's going to, you know, bring these two frames together and just make it a more solid piece, an integrated piece. So just keep adding till you reach the base of the framework, then always do a double wrap around so it doesn't slip around the frames, the circular frames. So double link in there, and then again bring the wire back up. You're going to do these diagonal and just keep going around that framework, and just make sure, do it slowly, that you've got these nice, and you don't have to do, you could wire in shapes, you could wire in anything. So finish off all the ends and secure the wire as best you can. None of it's very heavy, so you don't need masses of binding, but just make it look as neat as possible. And then just spend a bit of time making sure the whole thing is secure and the framework is, you know, it's not going to bend, and then we just need to do the top. So you can find a bead to put on. I made this on my coiling gizmo, this wire bead, but I think it's a bit crazy for it. It takes away from the centerpiece, so I'm just going to use this simple bead. So I'm just going to take my bail making pliers and roll the excess wire down to create a coil. But if you don't have this much wire, you can make a wrapped loop or just a link at the top. I've got a bit too much, so I'm just using it all up, and I'll take off the excess because I only want two sort of links at the top for my hanger. And then, sorry, my hands are out of camera. I hadn't realized when I was filming it, but I've just created the top link, and now I just need to suspend it off from something. You could also suspend something from the base if you wanted to, or you could wire the whole of the outer frame with more little crystal beads. So that's the end of it, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Many thanks.